Let's focus on this International Women's Day being the 8th of March. The United Nations is calling for gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. The organization considers gender equality as one of the greatest global challenges of the 21st century. This year's focus highlights the link between gender equity and climate change because women and girls experience the greatest impacts of the climate crisis. Well, let's discuss this further now with Ayakha Melithafa from the Presidential Climate Commission. She's also a member of the African Climate Alliance. Ayakha, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Happy International Women's Day to you. And I wonder if that is appropriate because sometimes you get a sense that we are here year in and year out and there are empty promises that governments and the world makes for women and there's very little progress.
Good afternoon, Dan. It's quite great to be here. Thank you for having me. And thank you. It is an International Women's Day, but I think Women's Day should be every day because we really are the Mbogodos of our time. And there's no denying that we are quite in an unequal world and women are still having to fight for spaces that are rightfully theirs. But what I can definitely tell you is that the woman definitely is, the future is definitely women, and it's bold and it's proud. And basically, you can't lock us out of these important discussion rooms anymore. We see for the fact that I'm able to be on the Presidential Climate Commission, it just shows how much we are starting to include women in these much anticipated discussions.
Yeah, how significant is the fact that for this year, the UN has made this link between gender equity and climate change? How significant is this for you?
I applaud it. It's quite significant, but I would have liked it to be made quite sooner because women have been disproportionately affected by a lot of socioeconomic issues in our history. And it's quite unfair that we're only getting our recognition now. But I'm quite happy that it is happening. It really shows us that there is progress happening. I just wish it was happening at a faster pace because women are here.
Yeah, and the greatest impacts of the climate crisis, I mean, they are really burdening a lot of women and girls across the world. What stands out for you? What are these impacts like?
I mean, like, for me, they're quite personal because the whole reason I am a climate justice activist is because I saw how much climate change affected my mom and how much she had to be resilient and make do with the little resources that she had to make sure that we slept with full bellies at night. And that just showed me the burden that women carry in society, that we will be disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. We're disproportionately affected by other socioeconomic issues. So for me, it's quite important for women to actually take up space because we are the ones that are bearing the brunt of climate change. We are the ones that are bearing the brunt of gender-based violence. I mean, look at the feminicide that's happening here in South Africa. So I'm quite proud of the women, how resilient we are and how much we are working hard to make sure that we insert ourselves in the spaces that we have not been able to have access to in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we're still dealing with the devastating effects of the COVID-19 pandemic as this day is being marked internationally, highlighting a sustainable tomorrow. You yourself has mentioned a number of socio-economic challenges, difficulties that women face. And we know in our country, gender-based violence and femicide is a scourge here. It's an epidemic on its own. But insofar as sustainability is concerned, what do you believe should be the focus going forward, Ayakha, to make sure that the future is better?
I mean, I think there should really be a focus on education and awareness because women are still, unfortunately, not educated in things that they need to be educated in. I mean, like women in farming communities, majority of farmers in Africa are women, especially small-scale farmers, and yet they are not actually having the information and the awareness about climate change. Now they can't even protect themselves against the issues of climate change or the effects of climate change. And I definitely feel like we're in a big time. There's a lot that's happening in one time, and like most of the time, young kids get left out of the conversation. But in reality, we have to start the education in schools. We have to change our education system. But I know that's a long process, but there's a lot we can do in our capacities that will make sure that women and children are not left behind in the conversation.
Yeah, you're a climate change or a climate justice activist, and I'm just thinking that we know that there's an interdependence here in terms of justice, because it's indivisible in terms of human rights. It's really at the center of it. To get at that equitable society, there has to be justice. What does a just transition look like for you as a young woman? I mean, on this International Women's Day going forward, in terms of this country, what does a just transition in terms of energy look like to Ayakha?
Yeah. For me, a just transition is not just about environmental justice. It's not just about social justice. I mean, basically, it intersects all other things as well. It's about economic justice. It's about social justice. It's about environmental justice. So the more we look at it in that broader scope, instead of just looking at it this one energy just transition, we'll be able to make sure that everyone or all of the stakeholders that get affected by the just transition don't get left behind. In the just transition, I can say it like that. Even now, as the Presidential Climate Commission, we are conducting community engagements all around South Africa in the most affected areas when it comes to the just transition. And I would encourage all of the young people and everyone that's watching eNCA now to be able to take part in those discussions, because those discussions that are happening are the discussions that are going to directly affect our future in a couple of years. And we need every single person to be part of those discussions and get their voices heard. You can get the dates of the community engagements for the Just Transition Framework on the Presidential Climate Commission website to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, because that's definitely what we need. We need the women on the ground. We need the women that have been in Bokoto for years to have a say in what a just transition looks like for them. So that's what's important for me as a young woman, is to see other young women being able to participate in this space as the platforms are being made available. It's just that there's not education and awareness to make us know that we can actually participate in these spaces.
Yeah, you made mention earlier, Ayakha, that International Women's Day or occasions like this should be marked every day, Just indulge me for a second, take a short-term view. We are sitting on the 8th of March, and in this country on the 9th of August, we celebrate, we commemorate, we mark the 9th of August, which is the National Women's Day in this country. Between now and August, if you had a magic wand and you had three things you'd like, for example, the President, Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, to deliver for women in this country, to make sure that we can see now that they are not just empty promises, but the gap is really being addressed. Just take a short-term view. What would you like to see? If you were to choose three things and wave your magic wand and Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa makes it happen between now and the 9th of August, what would those three things be?
Firstly, the first one is definitely education and awareness. I can't hammer this point down enough. Education and awareness is crucial for society, especially women, to know their worth and know their rights and know what they can speak up against. The second one is definitely the basic income grant. The 350 is really not enough, and women bear the burden of having to supply resources, having to be able to take kids to school, having to be able to do social work that is not paid for. So that basic income grant, universal basic income grant, would definitely be great. But especially here in South Africa, we can start with us and implement that basic income grant, as well as women organizations. There should be an emphasis on funding on NGOs, NPOs that are started by women, because women really are doing all of the work on the ground, and we do it out of passion. We don't get compensated for that work. So if there could be a stipend or just funding going into these organizations for women, it can really just drive the change that we want to see. Because when we look up and when we think about heroes in South Africa, we always think about women, because they are the ones that have really been carrying the burden of society and the burden of the socioeconomic injustices.
Well, we hope Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa has been listening to this interview, or somebody from his office at least. You make very good sense there. Those things are achievable in the short to medium term. Thank you very much, Ayakha Melithafa from the Presidential Climate Commission, sharing some of your views, insights on this International Women's Day being marked all over the world. Still